Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The sound of a fist colliding with a locker echoed like a gunshot through the deserted hallway, followed immediately by the terrifying screech of metal warping under pressure. "Say it again," Mathias hissed, his voice a low, vibrating growl that promised violence, his forearm pressing crushing weight against Erik's throat. "Say it to my face, you rat." Erik didn't flinch, didn't struggle, didn't beg. He simply stared back into the storm-blue eyes of the boy who had made his life a living hell for 6 months, his own gaze unervingly calm amidst the chaos. "I said," Erik rasped, breath failing but spirit unbroken, "that you are terrifyingly lonely, Mathias. And no amount of bruising me is going to make your father love you." For a second, time suspended. The air between them crackled, heavy with the scent of expensive cologne, old sweat, and the sharp, metallic tang of adrenaline. Mathias's pupil dilated, swallowing the iris, oscillating wildly between murderous rage and a devastating, suffocating desire that terrified him more than any rumor ever could. He pulled his fist back, knuckles white, ready to shatter the stillness, and perhaps Erik's jaw, when the bell rang. To understand the violence, you have to understand the silence that came before it. St. Jude's Academy was not merely a school. It was a kingdom carved out of marble and old money, nestled in the isolated fjords where the sun barely touched the ground in winter. Here, reputation was currency, and silence was the only shield. At the apex of this food chain sat Mathias Nielsen. He was the golden heir, the captain of the rowing team, the boy with the sharp jawline and the colder eyes. He moved through the corridors with a retinue of sycophants, a king who ruled through fear and a dazzling, practiced charm that never quite reached his gaze. And then there was Erik. Erik had arrived in the fall, a transfer student on a hardship scholarship. He was everything Mathias was not: quiet, observant, unbothered by the social hierarchy, and maddeningly content in his own skin. He wore secondhand sweaters and rode a battered bicycle, and yet he walked with a dignity that made Mathias's expensive tailoring look like a costume. From the first day, Mathias had hated him. He hated him because Erik saw things. Erik had a way of looking at people, looking at Mathias, as if he were reading the liner notes of a tragic play. The rumor mill at St. Jude's was a vicious machine. They whispered that Mathias was untouchable, that he had a girl in the city, that he was destined for Parliament. But there were other whispers, fainter ones, that Mathias ruthlessly suppressed. Whispers about where he went on Tuesday nights. Whispers about why he never let anyone touch him. It was a Tuesday when the dynamic shifted from predator and prey to something far more volatile. Mathias had been cornered in the locker room, not by a student, but by a panic attack. It hit him like a physical blow, his chest constricting, the walls of the tiled showers closing in. He slid down the wall, gasping, clutching his chest, the invincible prince reduced to a trembling child. He didn't hear the door open. He only registered the presence when a warm hand touched his shoulder. "Breathe," a voice said. Not mocking, not pitying, just steady. Mathias looked up, vision blurring, to see Erik kneeling in front of him. Erik wasn't recording him. He wasn't laughing. He was simply holding a bottle of water, his dark eyes filled with a concern that burned Mathias like acid. "Get away from me," Mathias choked out, slapping the water away. "Count to 4. Erik instructed, ignoring the outburst. "In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. "Do it, Mathias." Maybe it was the shock, or maybe it was the authority in Erik's quiet voice, but Mathias obeyed. They sat there on the cold tiles for 10 minutes, the silence heavy and strange. When Mathias finally regained his composure, the shame hit him instantly. He stood up, smoothing his uniform, the mask slamming back into place. "If you tell anyone," Mathias whispered, his voice returning to its usual icy cadence, "I will destroy you. I will make sure you're expelled before the sun rises." Erik stood slowly, dusting off his knees. He looked at Mathias, really looked at him, with that piercing analysis that made Mathias feel naked. "I don't deal in rumors, Mathias. Unlike you. That should have been the end of it. Instead, it was the beginning of a war." Over the next month, Mathias escalated. He turned the school against Erik. Books were knocked from hands. Rumors were planted that Erik was a thief, Isolation was enforced. Mathias needed to break Erik. He needed to prove that Erik was weak, that Erik was just another insect to be crushed. Because if Erik was weak, then Erik's knowledge of Mathias's weakness didn't matter. But Erik didn't break. He endured the shoulder checks in the hallway and the graffiti on his locker with a stoic grace that drove Mathias to the brink of insanity. The breaking point came during the winter gala preparations. The student council, led by Mathias, was forced to stay late to decorate the Great Hall. A blizzard had rolled in off the coast, burying the academy in white and knocking out the power lines. The Great Hall was plunged into darkness, save for the eerie blue moonlight filtering through the high windows. The other students had fled to the dorms before the lockdown, leaving Mathias and Erik alone in the cavernous room, surrounded by half-hung streamers and ladders. Mathias paced the floor, the flashlight on his phone casting jagged shadows against the portraits of alumni. "This is your fault," he snapped, the tension of the last few weeks bubbling over. "If you hadn't messed up the scheduling, we would be in the dorms." Erik was sitting on the edge of the stage, watching Mathias pace. "I didn't mess up the schedule, Mathias. You changed the times on the spreadsheet to make me look incompetent. We both know that." "Shut up," Mathias roared, the sound echoing off the vaulted ceiling. He stormed over to the stage, looming over Erik. "You think you're so smart. You think you're better than us because you don't care about the game. I think the game is rigging you to fail as a human being," Erik retorted calmly. Mathias grabbed Erik by the lapels of his sweater and hauled him to his feet. The proximity was dizzying. Mathias could smell the rain on Erik's clothes, the faint scent of old paper and soap. His heart hammered against his ribs, fear, rage, and that terrible, clawing hunger he refused to name. "You don't know anything about me," Mathias whispered, shaking him. "I know you look at me when you think no one is watching," Erik said softly. The words hung in the freezing air, a truth so loud it was deafening. Mathias froze. The accusation stripped him bare. It was the forbidden thought, the terror that kept him awake at night. "He knows." "You're disgusting," Mathias spat, though his hands didn't let go. In fact, they tightened, pulling Erik closer, confusing violence with embrace. "Am I?" Erik challenged, his voice dropping an octave. He didn't pull away. He stepped into the space, his chest brushing Mathias's. "Or are you just terrified that I'm the only one who fits into the hollow space inside you?" Mathias let out a shuddering breath. The facade was cracking. The pressure of being the perfect son, the perfect king, the perfect lie was too much. He looked at Erik's lips, parted, waiting, and the dam broke. Mathias didn't kiss him gently. He crashed his mouth against Erik's with the force of a collision. It was a kiss of desperation, of anger, of starving need. He bit at Erik's lip, his hands tangling in Erik's hair, pulling him harsh and tight. For a moment, Erik was stunned, but then he surged back, matching Mathias's intensity. He shoved Mathias back against the wall, the impact knocking a painting askew. Hands roamed frantically over coats and sweaters, seeking heat in the freezing hall. It was a battle for dominance, a physical exorcism of months of silent tension. When they finally broke apart, gasping, mist clouding between them, the silence was different. It wasn't empty anymore. It was charged, electric. Mathias rested his forehead against Erik's, his eyes squeezed shut. "I hate you," he whispered, his voice trembling. "No, you don't," Erik replied, his thumb brushing the corner of Mathias's bruised mouth. But this wasn't a fairy tale. An St. Jude's was not a place for happy endings. The next morning, the power returned, and with it, reality. Mathias woke up in the staff lounge where they had fallen asleep, wrapped in curtain velvets. He looked at Erik, sleeping peacefully, and panic, cold, sharp, and familiar, seized him. What have I done? If his father found out? If the school found out? The rumors? Mathias fled. By noon, the atmosphere at St. Jude's had shifted. A photo was circulating. It wasn't of the kiss, thank God, but it was a picture of them sleeping near each other, looking intimate, unguarded. A janitor had snapped it and sent it to a gossip group. Mathias stood in the center of the cafeteria, his phone burning a hole in his hand. The whispers were deafening. Asterisk, is it true? Is the king a queer? Asterisk. Panic is a blinding thing. It creates monsters. And Mathias, terrified of the fall, chose to become the monster everyone expected him to be rather than the man he wanted to be. He marched to Erik's table. Erik looked up, a small, hopeful smile gracing his lips, a smile that vanished when he saw the ice in Mathias's eyes. "It's fake," Mathias announced loudly, his voice carrying over the silent lunchroom. He threw his phone onto the table. "This pervert staged it while I was asleep." The room gasped. Erik's face went pale, the blood draining away until he looked like a ghost. "Mathias, don't speak to me," Mathias sneered, channeling every ounce of his father's cruelty to protect his glass house. "I tolerated your charity case existence, Erik. But trying to ruin my reputation to make yourself feel important? That's pathetic. Even for you." He turned to his entourage. "Get him out of my sight." The betrayal was absolute. It wasn't just a rejection, it was a public execution of Erik's character. Erik stood up, his chair scraping loudly. He didn't fight. He didn't scream. He looked at Mathias with a profound, shattering disappointment that hurt more than any fist. "You really are a coward," Erik said quietly. Then he walked out. Mathias won. The rumors died down, replaced by the narrative of the predatory scholarship student. Erik was ostracized completely. He stopped eating in the cafeteria. He stopped looking at Mathias. He became a ghost haunting the halls. And Mathias died a little every day. The victory tasted like ash. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt Erik's mouth on his. Every time he looked at his hands, he saw them tangling in Erik's hair. He drank more. He fought more. He became sharper, crueler, trying to cut away the rotting part of his soul, but the rot was the only thing keeping him alive. 3 weeks later, the annual rowing regatta party was held at the Nielsen estate. It was a display of opulence, champagne flowing like water, the elite of the country gathering to congratulate Mathias's father. Mathias stood on the balcony, looking out at the dark ocean. He was surrounded by people, yet he was entirely alone. "You look like you're attending a funeral," a voice said. Mathias turned. It was Felix, his vice captain. Felix was swirling a glass of wine, a cruel smirk on his face. "Shame about the rat, though. I heard the administration is revoking his scholarship next week. Moral turpitude, or something. Good job, Captain." The world stopped. "What?" Mathias asked, his voice hollow. "Erik," Felix laughed. "He's being expelled. You said you wanted him gone. Your dad pulled some strings." Expelled. Erik was losing his future. Because of a lie. Because of Mathias's lie. Mathias looked at the glass in his hand. He looked at his father inside, shaking hands, smiling that shark-like smile. He looked at the life laid out for him, cold, powerful, and empty. He remembered the panic attack in the locker room. He remembered the warmth of Erik's hand. "I don't deal in rumors, Mathias." Something in Mathias snapped. Not a break, but a realignment. The fear that had piloted him for 18 years suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the vast, crushing weight of losing Erik forever. Mathias set his glass on the stone railing. "Excuse me," he said to Felix. "Where are you going?" "The toast is in 5 minutes. To fix something." Mathias didn't take the limousine. He took his motorcycle, tearing out of the estate, the engine screaming into the night. He rode recklessly, the wind biting through his tuxedo, speeding toward the small, run-down apartment complex in town where scholarship students lived. He pounded on the door. No answer. He pounded again, harder. "Erik, open the damn door." The door cracked open. Erik stood there, wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants, looking tired. His eyes widened when he saw Mathias, drenched in sea spray, hair windblown, still in his tuxedo. "Go away, Mathias," Erik said wearily, moving to close the door. Mathias slammed his hand against the wood. "No, I have nothing left for you to take," Erik said, his voice cracking. "You took my reputation. You took my school. Leave me my sleep." "I'm not here to take," Mathias panted, his chest heaving. "I'm here to. I don't know." "Then leave." "I can't," Mathias shouted, the desperation bleeding through. "I can't leave. I can't sleep. I can't breathe. I look at the walls and I see you. I look at the water and I see you." He pushed past Erik into the small, cramped hallway. It smelled like Erik, soap and paper. Mathias felt his knees go weak. "I stopped the expulsion," Mathias lied. He hadn't yet, but he would. He would burn down the school before he let Erik leave. I'll tell them I lied." Erik stared at him, wary, arms crossed over his chest. Why? Why now? Because you were right, Mathias whispered, stepping closer, his arrogance stripped away, leaving only the raw, terrified boy beneath. I am lonely. I am terrified. And he choked on the words, the admission he had spent a lifetime running from. And Erik prodded, his eyes searching Mathias's face. Mathias reached out, his hand trembling, and grasped Erik's wrist. It was a plea, a surrender. And I don't want to be the king if it means I have to rule alone. I want to be known. By you. The silence stretched, agonizing and thin. Erik looked at Mathias's hand on his wrist, then up to his eyes. He saw the regret. He saw the truth. You hurt me, Erik said softly. You humiliated me. I know. Mathias rasped, tears pricking his eyes, the first tears he had shed since he was 7. I will spend every day fixing it. I will grovel. I will let them talk. Let them say I'm weak. Let them say I'm crazy. I don't care about the rumors anymore, Erik. I just care that you're looking at me. Erik sighed, a sound that carried the weight of the world, and the tension in his shoulders dropped. He didn't smile, but he stepped forward. He reached up and untied Mathias's bow tie, his fingers brushing against Mathias's pulse point. You're going to have to do a lot more than grovel, Erik murmured, his eyes dark. Anything, Mathias swore. Name it. Start by shutting up, Erik said, and this time, he was the one who initiated the kiss. It wasn't a violent collision like the first time. It was slow. It was deep. It was acclaiming. Mathias made a broken sound in his throat and wrapped his arms around Erik, burying his face in Erik's neck, holding on as if Erik was the only solid thing in a universe of liquid. They moved to the small, lumpy couch, limbs tangling. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. Mathias, the heir, the prince, the bully, was on his knees, head in Erik's lap, his expensive tuxedo jacket discarded on the floor. Erik ran his fingers through Mathias's hair, a soothing, possessive rhythm. Tomorrow, Erik said, his voice firm, we walk into that school together. You tell the truth. Mathias looked up, his eyes red-rimmed, but clear for the first time in his life. The fear was still there, lurking at the edges, but the warmth of Erik's hand was stronger. Let them talk, Mathias whispered, turning to kiss the palm of Erik's hand. Let them scream. I'm not listening to them anymore. The storm outside raged on, battering the windows, but inside, the silence was finally, mercifully, peaceful. The rumors would start tomorrow, vicious, biting, scandalous rumors. But for the first time, the subject of the rumors didn't care. The viper had been tamed, not by force, but by the one thing he had never been offered, acceptance. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf, by surrendering his fangs. If you enjoyed seeing Mathias finally kneel for what matters, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a bully who destroyed your reputation for love, or is some damage too deep to heal? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt. Masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art, 2 men, BL, Yaoi, man 1. Mathias, blonde hair messy, wearing unbuttoned tuxedo shirt, kneeling on floor, head resting on man 2's lap, expression of vulnerable exhaustion, tears in eyes, clinging to man 2's waist. Man 2. Erik, dark hair, wearing simple gray t-shirt and sweatpants, sitting on worn couch, looking down with soft but stern expression, hand running through man 1's hair. Background is a dimly lit small apartment living room, rain against window, discarded tuxedo jacket on floor, emotional atmosphere, cinematic lighting, intimate mood, sharp focus, intricate details.